Hi, my name is Katie Provenzano, and I started the LACA AV Club. We're a supportive community of audio and video producers, and I'm honored to be hosting the Q&A tonight. Again, if you have a question, please let me know, and you can ask as well. I solicited some questions ahead of time. Dawson was so nice to be able to provide his movie on YouTube, so a lot of people have been able to see it. Do you know how many views you're up to?
Yeah, we just hit 4,000 views a couple days ago.
Yeah, congratulations.
For those of you who don't know, my name's Dawson Segraves. I'm the director and the primary writer on this film, as well as starring in it, but yeah.
I'm Della. I played Julie in the film.
I'm Torin Saxton, and I co-wrote, co-directed, but I also starred as Joel, which was the main thing I did.
I'm Savanna Stark. I was the primary camera operator and also did much of the wardrobe.
And I'm Hans Morgan. I've been helping Dawson Films for a while now, since pretty much the beginning. But for this film, I did mostly the boom mic work. Just a crew.
Thank you. How were you able to keep modern people, objects, and vehicles out of frame?
I'd say with production, actually, that was probably the biggest issue. Most of the time we ran into people that were super happy to move their cars. For just about every scene that you guys watch up there, there was probably instances of us going and knocking on doors, closing off roads and things like that. I mean, just for a few shots, we closed off like an entire city block area and asked everyone to move their cars. Not always everyone is so happy to move their stuff. So we work around that, but overall it's difficult, but obviously, if you saw, a 2007 car driving through frame, it wouldn't convey the same experience. So that was one of our top priorities with filming on this. So.
Oh, we have a question. I wanted Dawson to tell the story for the drag race scene, how he had cones blocking the road without permission, and how the state police showed up.
Without permission isn't exactly correct. Sometimes you just kind of have to take it upon yourself to do things like that. We knew we had a small window to film that drag race scene, like really small, and it would have been very difficult to get a hold of the township in time. And a few of us sat on that road one day in a chair and counted how many cars went through it to make sure that we weren't, inhibiting anyone's travel plans there. And then we went to a few houses, dropped off some letters telling we'd be filming. And it worked almost the whole time. Towards the end, people are really angry about just a road being blocked off. I mean, it's a 2-minute detour to go around, and we'd get someone was happy enough to notify the police, and they came, and she was super helpful and supportive and everything. She didn't, shut us down or anything, and we finished everything, and it worked out great, I'd say. So sometimes you got to take it upon yourself to do things like that. I always do usually ask for permission, but
I really want to see the end of the race.
At the end of the drag race?
Yeah. I was disappointed.
Yeah. So it's a little bit fun to leave it up to speculation on who wins there. And it would have been a little difficult as well. Not everyone likes racing their vintage cars, but yeah, some people do a little too much as well. So yeah.
Who was the cowboy hat driver in the blue car?
He was my uncle, Randy Saxton. He's here in the crowd. He was happy enough to lend his vehicle multiple times, but then even race it there. So thanks to him. And the reason we didn't have all the cars working, one of them was not going. We didn't trust it to go the full speed, and that's why there was no end of the drag race.
What camera did you shoot with?
It was shot on the Panasonic GH5.
Yeah, and it goes along with that. First of all, I applaud you. It's amazing, you guys. The work you did is amazing. And I also have to say, I was 16 in 1974, and no one drove cars like you guys. But where did you get all the equipment? That's not inexpensive equipment.
A lot of help from my family, saving up. Over the years, if you go back and watch any of my other videos, you see a little bit of a quality jump with each of them. Gaining more equipment. Sometimes we don't always have the money to get equipment. I know the boom mic that we had, Hans knows this very well, is an aluminum rod we had in the garage. And we kind of fashioned a little bit of a boom pole out of it. But it's very much so a collection over the years of everything that we've gotten. And it's this is pretty much all I do. So this is where my money goes.
How were you able to achieve smooth panning, tilt, and tracking?
So this kind of goes in line with the equipment for anyone who knows camera things. We do have a fluid head tripod, which we do a lot of the shooting on. We actually constructed a dolly for filming. There were a few shots in the storyboard that really needed a dolly. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a big cart that sits on tracks. My dad and I helped. We kind of constructed that. We have a gimbal, which we did the underhand thing for the drag race when you see the feet walking and everything. So yeah.
And that dolly, somebody has to push it along with operate the camera. Is that?
Yeah. Savanna has a funny story about. We had to do reshoots for a day, and there are plenty of reshoots. And sometimes not everyone is available for reshooting. So she kind of acted as a one-man band on that thing. So she can just.
Yeah, for the reshoots we didn't have anybody to operate anything basically, and we had James Gustafson come in and help out with the boom mic since we didn't have any there for that. So I had to pan, focus pull, and run myself on the dolly with my foot and my 100 hands that I have apparently.
If I could have a video of watching her do that, it'd probably be more entertaining than the scene itself. So.
How did you shoot the moving vehicle shots where Mark is driving?
My vehicle, the back window goes down, so we were able to drive either in front of it, recording out the back, or more excitingly, able to drive beside it in the other lane, waiting, hoping no car would come at us and record for a while we could, while the camera had to be smooth. And yeah, she was hanging out the window recording while I was driving, and you gotta make it smooth because it gets way bumpy on the roads.
We spent an entire day filming down this one stretch out of town where none of the shots were ever used, but we spent an entire time, like a couple hours, going up and down this road, listening to the same song, trying to get it right, and we got a couple shots, but they were not used.
Which scene required the most number of takes?
Does anyone have an answer for that? I can start off by saying most of them required way too many takes. There's a deleted scene. It's kind of like a sunset dance kind of thing, and it was supposed to be the second part of the first date. We spent 3 nights out at the project, south of town, doing this filming on this roadside, and never got used because the weather was just not right. And we tried so hard to get that scene to work. We're all a little picky with what we shoot, but I'd say 3 days is normally the cutoff. If we shoot a scene for 3 days in a row and it's not working, it's us that's doing something wrong. So we usually cut it.
In the montage, there's that part where Julie and Mark are dancing with each other on the top of a dune. We kind of have named it the Beach Baby Dance part, but that scene took a super duper long time because we had only Savanna that night, I think, and we only had Savanna, so she had the camera, and we have it on this stabilizer thing called a gimbal. And she was trying to get these movement shots of us like dancing and kind of like going all over the place. And it took so many tries and so many different kind of angles to get it right, to get it where you could really feel that like Dawson and I were truly like having fun during that. And we do have a behind the scenes of that dance, a full extended one. But it's a really fun thing to see her with the movement of the camera and getting it perfectly right to match kind of our movements. But that took a lot of takes.
Was there a scene that was done in very small amount, like one possibly? Like I was thinking about the fireworks, like you only have so much time to do that fireworks scene?
Yes, the fireworks, that was, funny enough, the first shooting day we ever had. It's kind of holds true in our memories. We all get a little nostalgic and emotional over it. That was our first shooting day. We went out and we climbed, how many dunes we climbed during this project, I don't know, but we were climbing through the dunes and we found a nice little spot, and we, I hope we didn't disturb any of the fireworks. We had like 1 million set lights out there and batteries controlling it all just for a few shots with the fireworks, and when the fireworks started, we knew we only had a small pocket of time, so we still did a large number of takes for that, but yeah.
The colors in Julia are incredibly vibrant and probably one of my favorite aspects of your video. Did you color correct like in post to be able to get those colors, or were you lucky enough to capture those?
Believe it or not, sometimes, very few times, it needed very little color grading and color grading, shifting and saturating certain colors in frame. Sometimes when you get a beautiful sunset, it was almost best to just not play with it at all because it looked great. But most of the scenes were color corrected to make it colorful. Obviously, when you're trying to convey a mood, a lot of that can be done through color, through the film. And most of the scenes, obviously, it's a very vibrant, fun love story, 70s, and all the color and everything. So most scenes were color corrected to kind of boost that a little bit and give that warm summer feeling.
With the 1974 theme, how were you able to find all the vintage props? I'll start with beverages and food.
Specifically on the food, the quarter pounder burger boxes, we found a laid out 70s burger box online, a picture of it, and Doss took it and printed it onto some poster paper stuff, and through many trial and errors got the box itself.
With great help from my mother, of course. I would have heard about that one later if I didn't say that.
The wardrobes were fabulous. Where did you guys go? Where did you go to get all of those 70s clothes?
Well, we got a lot of them from Torin's wonderful mother. But she had a lot of clothing that was just back in her closet that was truly from the 70s, and they were hers. And luckily, we're the exact same size. So that's great. But finding all that clothing was really Savanna doing a lot of it.
Yeah, I'd say Dawson and I spent hours and hours going through online shopping on Etsy and Poshmark, and we scrolled through probably thousands of pages trying to find exactly what we were looking for.
And then how many vintage cars are featured?
Definitely quite a bit. You can kind of see it there at the end of the credits. There's quite a bit of vintage cars there. That was obviously a huge part for us in production, having these cars that everyone remembers. And though they might not be as nice as the ones you guys drove when you were younger, yeah, cleaner. I can't say how many I have. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, there's probably about 20 or so that we have on our contact list that we organize scenes for.
That's amazing. Besides your boom pole and boom mic, did you use any other mics to capture audio? I thought the audio was fabulous.
At least somebody didn't know. Thank you. I was reminded, like Dawson said earlier, that the boom pole was aluminum, particularly when it was cold outside and I was sitting there holding it up. It was quite cold. Most of it was the boom pole and the boom mic, the shotgun mic we had attached to the end.
Did you have to dub any audio that it was too windy or for whatever reason?
There was like one or two overdubs that you might have noticed, but other than that, it was mostly on the scene itself.
Yeah, I'd say this is an extremely hidden and unnoticed part of production for most people who watch it, which is the goal, obviously. So if anyone who doesn't know what overdubbing is, maybe let's say audio didn't necessarily work out or we weren't recording at the right time on scene, we'd have to go home and then we'd sit in front of a boom mic in front of my computer trying to emulate the same actions that we did on screen. And that whole opening scene had zero audio in it, so there were times where I was sitting in my room with a pile of cassettes or little bracelet or whatever, clicking them together to try to make it sound like it did on screen. And then there were some lines, obviously, if you didn't notice it, then we did our job right, that we overdubbed later. There was a lot of times where I had to call people in to, hey, say this one line again, and yeah.
How was the music chosen? Did you have songs in mind while you were writing scenes, or did you pick the music after scenes were written?
The music was obviously a huge thing. It's honestly one of the biggest things for us in this, because a lot of the times it says a lot about the story itself. And a lot of the times we had music in mind when we had it. We would have a timer running to time how long it took to get to like the main chorus of the song a lot of the time, and we'd have to plan that out beforehand. But most of the time we had them set in place, I would say. There were a lot of times where we ended up changing the song afterwards, though. I know there were a few songs in there that were in Julie, and then a week before it, we found some more songs. I know anyone who knows the First Class noticed many of their songs, and the people who sang Beach Baby, and we've all kind of fell in love with them. But yeah, most of the time we had things in mind for those scenes.
Was the song Julie, you knew you were going to use that? Was that the reason for the character name, or did that come later?
Yeah, so the first song, actually the first thing that was kind of brought Julie out of our minds, and actually a real thing, was it was way back in probably April or February. Okay, never mind. It was in February, and I knew I wanted to make something fun after our last movie, and I thought, let's make a love story. And obviously, we needed a name. I knew I wanted music to play a huge part in it. At this point, it wasn't even set in the 70s, and this was kind of what pushed us in that direction. The song, Julie, Do You Love Me, was the first thing I kind of saw in my playlist, and I remember presenting the idea, what if it was named Julie? And that's where, it's such a nice name. That's where the whole story was kind of born from. That was the first concept that we surrounded on, and we knew she was going to be named Julie from that song.
Dawson, what was it like acting in and directing a film?
A lot of work, I would say. Definitely. I have to have a lot of faith and trust in these four people, because most of the time where I might be behind the camera, I'm now in front of the camera conveying my own emotions. So a lot of faith had to be put into these four people you see here, and I wasn't let down whatsoever by their performance. I know I had to teach a lot of them how to do things on the camera, or do things with audio, and a lot of faith had to be put into everyone, but it didn't fall short whatsoever. Where I thought maybe the film might suffer if I wasn't behind the camera, it's completely the opposite of that. Everyone did an amazing job, and I'd say that's the biggest part of it.
In the scene by the fire, how did you make Julie disappear during that pan?
So when we filmed that scene, it was 2 a.m, and we were out there, and I was very cold. And before that, I had to be there the entire time, obviously, but I was not in the scene until late. So they were there until like 4 a.m. I left at like 2:30, but so that entire thing, I had just been sleeping in Dawson's car, and I woke up and I went to where that scene was, and we wanted to do this whole thing of it's Mark kind of seeing Julie, realizing he needs her, and then realizing she was never there, and so we didn't know how to quite get that shot where it would go behind and then I would be gone, so we decided that I would be sitting in the chair when the shot was going towards Dawson's back, and then I would run the other direction. And it took a bunch of times because I'm not that fast of a runner, and I was tired and it was late, but I run the other direction, and then the chair like slightly moves because I bolted out of it, and Dawson was just telling me, we just realized that I could have just ran the other way and it would have been way easier. Like, I was running like completely sideways, but I could have just been running forward, but none of us realized. So it could have been a lot less trouble than it was.
I've learned shooting, when you get around that 2 a.m. mark, none of us are thinking as clearly as we'd like to be. Watching that back, it was only like a few weeks ago I realized, what if she would have just ran the other direction? And yeah, that's how we made her disappear.
The fire was also sparking crazy in that scene. How were you able to do that?
I was sitting on the ground in the dirt with a giant stick prodding the fire very aggressively the entire time that we were out there for hours.
And safely.
It was part of my vision, I'd say, for the fire pit. I mean, if you actually look at it and think about it, not that many embers come out of a fire, but it contributed a lot, I feel like, to the look and the moment of it. It was beautiful. We loved the way it looked. And I do have some sympathy for her having to lay on the ground with a big stick for about 2 hours pushing that fire. I mean, we were even looking at different kinds of wood that would, ember a little more, so that wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, that didn't work. So.
Was this the first film you worked on as a group, or had you worked together previously on other projects?
Before being in Julie, I was in A Vitra's Box, which is the film Dawson did before that, which was in the winter of 2019, sorry. But that was what we did before that, and the others have been in others.
I've been working with him since the last Zoe video that he did, End of the Road. And then we both co-wrote, or at least came up with the story-wise for Vitra's Box. And it was a lot of fun to work on this one. Probably the most fun I've had, so.
I had been somewhat kind of working with him since some of the previous Zoe videos, the videos that he did with his dog. And this is the first one that I primarily took the camera operator role on.
And I've been here since the beginning. Pretty much. I helped with all the Zoe videos. I didn't help as much with Vitra's Box, but I did help out a lot with Julie, I'd say. But I've just kind of been around for a while.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't watched my past work, which was just kind of videos of my dog running around. But there's a little bit of a story to it. And Hans has definitely been one of the people who's been back there since, what year was that, would you say?
It was freshman year, so 2016?
Yeah, since 2016, he's been either, letting a dog run or holding a boom mic or just about anything you can imagine. He's the one that's been there for that. So he's been here with the longest, and we've kind of all just came together for this one.
So what's next for all of you? What the next project? What are you thinking?
We are currently writing a project right now that we like to hint about a little bit, that will be coming out next summer or so. If I can say one thing about it, let's just say the story of Mark and Julie wasn't the only thing that happened in the 70s around here. And on a completely unrelated note, if anyone has or knows anyone with 60s, 70s cars, props, houses, rooms, etc., if you guys know anyone and you haven't worked on this and you'd like your car to be featured in something, maybe not a film, who knows. If you'd like your car to be featured in something, then please talk to me, because I can make that happen, and we need all the help we can get. We were extremely lucky to get all the help that we got for this one, but not saying much, but for the next one, maybe, who knows. Yeah, kind of question?
You all have classes? How have you learned to handle the mic and the sound and the computer and the cameras?
Yeah. I'd say it's mostly experience. We've come and go. If you were to watch the film that we talked about coming out in 2016, you'd definitely see we weren't as far along as we are now. It's all been pretty much experience with all of our little tasks that we've done, and I haven't really had that many classes that have pushed me through this. It's all mostly self-taught on my end.
And we're each so interested in film that we've watched all behind-the-scenes features for stuff. We know so much about it that's helped us a lot. But yeah, like Dawson said, it's mostly trial and, more importantly, error.
Do we have any? I don't know if we have any questions here.
If it's not too personal, of the storyline, how much of it is fiction and how much is drawn from either personal or a friend's experience?
Little does anyone know that Julie's kind of a way of, when I originally wrote it, it was kind of my interesting way of cataloging my memories through high school. And I always kind of have a general fear of losing some of those memories one day. So, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, most things you see on screen have happened to me, and sometimes others. But most of the inspiration for just about every scene, it was kind of my way of remembering my time in high school as well. So I'd say most of it was, there's a little bit of fiction thrown in, but a lot of what happens on screen is quite actually accurate, whether that's a good or a bad thing. Yeah. I was hoping someone would ask that, actually. Thank you.
All the scenes seem to flow very well together, and understanding all the multiple shots you had, how did you do the editing?
I'd say that, for a little perspective, hundreds of hours went into editing this, probably. It's just unbelievable. For a lot of people who know, there were a lot of long nights towards the premiere where we'd all be just hunched around my computer trying to figure out little shots right there. When it comes to editing it, it might appear sometimes that we have multiple cameras filming something, but we have one camera. So a lot of the time, whenever anyone watches us run through the same lines over and over again, it's just with different camera angles, and then those will be synced up in post, and you can kind of watch them. And it has the appearance of multiple cameras.
Another thing with kind of working around only having one camera, in Mark and Julie's first date, we're obviously eating, and it's hard to have something look like you haven't been eating it when you have been eating it. And we had to have multiple takes of that. Obviously, I think we did 3 different angles. So we kept having to turn the burgers and make it look like we haven't been eating them, and it was a really difficult thing to get around only having one camera, because we obviously had to have both sides of the conversation, but we were trying to eat food.
Yeah, now none of you will not be able to notice the fact that there are little bites taken out of the burger around her hand that we tried so hard to hide.
Also, was there ice in the water at the long skinny part in the first scene and the long skinny part?
Yeah, that's another little interesting tidbit of info. We'll get to that. For anyone who has a little bit of a sharp eye or just an eye in general, that was not July at all. That was actually late October. We had to get to a point where we were finishing, and you'll see the alternate scene that was supposed to be there, but it just didn't work, and we finally decided that we needed to reshoot it. Now, luckily, most of our outfits we kind of planned. Even though we were supposed to be done by the end of summer, we knew that wasn't going to happen. So you'll see us wearing jackets a lot throughout the film, and it's summertime, because we knew this time come October, when it's 40 degrees out, we are still going to be filming some of these scenes. And thank God, at least Della didn't have a jacket, but at least I had a jacket.
Yeah, just wondering about what brought you to Ludington, or are any of you from Ludington? And how did you get so familiar with all of these wonderful scenes, these areas?
Some of us are from Ludington. There's 3 of us that are from Ludington here. I grew up here, and I'll let it go down the line. I grew up here, and I love this town unbelievably. It's why we didn't, set this somewhere else. We wanted to make sure the people of Ludington knew it was in Ludington, and hopefully they could relate with it in a way for maybe some of these people that grew up here around that time.
I did not grow up in Ludington. I'm originally from right outside of San Francisco, but I moved here when I was around 10. And then I started going to Ludington schools when I was in the 10th grade. And I know absolutely nothing about around Ludington. I still get lost driving around it. I don't really know much. So I kind of learned from everybody else where all the spots were.
I grew up in Ludington, and most of my family did too, so I had them telling me where there was these spots to go film. For example, the drag race scene, I had my dad tell me this street that people used to drag race on, actually, and so we actually went out there, and that's how it came to be.
I grew up in Ludington, and honestly, finding some of those spots is just from boredom in high school, driving around, not knowing what else to do.
I moved here 10 years ago from Ohio, so I didn't grow up here, but I know some of the scenes we found when we were filming Zoe videos. We'd walk around a lot. We spent a lot of days walking in Zoe videos since we didn't have cars, so we pretty much walked around town a bunch. And I imagine from that we got a general idea of what what areas were kind of iconic.
And when it comes to us coming together, obviously we all go to school together, and a lot of us just have a general interest in what we do, and we've been friends for a few years now, all of us. I've known Hans for years, and I've known Torin for a couple of years. I've known all these people for a few years or so, and we all kind of come together with the fact that we go to school together and have common interests, and we're certainly friends outside of this. We didn't just kind of work together. We're all kind of friends, but yeah.
Oh, we got one more question? Yep, or more questions?
One more question. First of all, I commend you all. You support each other, you really work like a team, and it's amazing and wonderful to see. But I want to know, how did you maintain being good students, and I know you are, and good scouts, and I know you are, and put this movie together?
An unbelievable amount of work. It was, I'd say for, at least when school started, me personally, right in September, I didn't have a second of free time probably doing just about anything. When it comes to, maintaining schoolwork, I'd like to lie and say that other things were my priority, but when it came down to, I have a piece of homework in front of me, I have a scene to edit that's going to come out next week, and all these other things, this definitely took the cake, and I hope that kind of shines through a little bit. I mean, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I'd say a lot of us, when it comes to those priorities, it's all about managing them correctly, and this has been probably my top priority. I can't say I've gone 10 minutes without thinking about this since like last April. It's unbelievable. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about their priorities.
I'll say something. I would say, probably for all of us, I would guess, like, those last 4 or 5 months, especially when we had classes and we were still shooting in the fall, it became quite stressful. It's probably I would say, probably one of the most stressful times. But I'm glad we managed to do it. And then, one of our catchphrases was, kind of through Julie, was, we didn't think it would actually work.
It's a little self-deprecating almost that we didn't think it was going to work, but working on a project this big, something's bound to go wrong, and things did go wrong. Trust me, things did go wrong, but we ended with a final product that, for the first time, at least I know I'm 100% happy with. It's like unbelievable, and we all have things we'd like to improve, but I'd say when it comes to everything we've made, this is the one that really came together for all of us. And a lot of things we didn't think would work, we didn't think we'd get to, and somehow they did work, and we got them, and I think that shines through a little bit in the film.
Yeah, I just want to add. So the magazines or booklets, whatever you want to call them, that you might have seen, I started writing that like 2 weeks before premiere day, and I was like, I should probably get this done. It was bad.
Yeah. Hans was the primary writer on it for anyone who was at the premiere, and I think there's a few still out there that got the behind-the-scenes booklets, which are full of a lot of these things we're telling you and amazing photos that we took. He was the primary writer on that, and all of us helped out a little bit with writing it. And that's another added-on thing. We had soundtracks that we gave the premiere, and along with the books and everything that we had to write, and it was quite the workload, I'd say. Yeah.
Speaking of soundtracks, are you going to get in trouble with ASCAP? Do you have to get permission to use some of those songs?
So the idea is that's another thing you kind of just have to. Very little. We don't have like contact with the record companies for these songs. Under the Fair Use Act, passed in I think 1976. We're allowed to use songs in like a public setting like this, as long as we're not claiming they were ours or that we profited off of them in any way, which we definitely didn't. And just in general, it kind of falls under that category. But permission is extremely hard to get for music, and record companies are never nice about it. As I know in the past, a lot of my videos get taken down because of it. And actually, when we wrote our last film, it didn't have much music in it at all because we wanted to keep it up on YouTube when it went up, and somehow this is allowed up, which is great. But I kind of went off on my own and decided if it gets taken down, it gets taken down, because music is something that I love so much, and this film would not be the same without the music that you guys heard in it. So we kind of took a leap of faith with it, but yeah. And then, yeah, you back there?
Yeah, I graduated in 70, 71, and I heard this advertised on K-Rock. And I thought, I grew up in this era, and I just said, I want to go there, I got to check this out and see how great of a job these guys did, and how real the life this is. And I got to hand it to you guys for the and life like than what you did. You did a fantastic job on it.
Honestly, some of the greatest compliments I get are from people like you that grew up in that time, and I envy anyone who grew up in this period of time, because let me tell you, I mean, there's a reason we did it in the 70s. I mean, we all love it so much. And I think that's probably one of the greatest compliments anyone can give me is the fact that I feel I wanted to give some of these people, some memories that they had from that time. And thank you so much, really. Yeah.
How hard is the crying scene?
Yeah, so the crying, sometimes it was real, sometimes it was forced. And real, I don't mean in like such a sad way or anything. It's really difficult, as this is one of my first times acting. I'll let Della talk about it for a second too, but to summon tears, it's not an easy thing whatsoever. I'm sure a lot of you can imagine. And it was one of the biggest struggles we had. I mean, sometimes I'd have to hold my eyes open to get them to dry out so my eyes would appear watery. I know during the fire pit scene, we had a lot of issues with things. I know a set light went crashing down and everything, and we were unbelievably stressed out. And my eyes watering were 100% real that night. Yeah, 100% real, whether it was the tear running down my face or anything. It's a little sad to say that sometimes that was real and that really, it comes through, but a lot of the times it was just kind of getting in the mood. I know for like the scene where they break up, normally we have happy music playing and stuff, a lot of the music that you hear here, because it's what we all love. No happy music allowed on set whatsoever. We had to get sad. And that was a big issue for us. It might spend an hour just kind of sitting there and just getting in kind of the mood.
Yeah, for the only real thing I had to cry at was the breakup scene, and I spent like probably a good hour just like sitting trying to become more sad. I was listening to the Les Mis soundtrack, the musical. Like, I don't know, those songs just get me really sad. And it was kind of difficult in the moment, but Dawson and I remember we weren't filming the dialogue, but we kept just saying it to each other to try to make it seem like we were having this conversation. And I remember this like one time we did it, it just clicked, and we both kind of just felt like it was getting real. And Dawson and I, we kind of have a hard time being serious with each other, but so the first couple times we were saying the dialogue to each other, we were kind of just like joking around and like using like silly voices, but then like it just kind of became like real, and then it was way easier to feel the moment and kind of step into more of a character's shoes of you're losing somebody like that. And it was kind of a cool thing to feel where like we're both kind of like, ooh, sad.
Yeah, there's one specific part in the breakup scene that actually I turn my head around and kind of look at her. It's like halfway through, I look at Julie, and I'd say that, it was, we were faking it the best we could. I know I was, and I looked behind me and I saw the emotion she was conveying on her face. And I'd say that scene took a turning point in that moment because it instantly became real for me when I saw the look on her face. And a lot of the time, it helps a bunch to ground yourself when you have another person there to act with, to simulate that emotion. So it was a very difficult thing, but we managed, at least, yeah.
Yeah. What was everyone's favorite scene or moment from the
I'll let Han start. I got to think about it.
I think putting me on the spot. Okay, I see this in two ways. There's my favorite scene I shot, and then there's my favorite scene I have. The favorite scene I shot was inside that boathouse, like the ending there, and when Mark's watching Nixon. I enjoyed that one a lot because we were just inside. We didn't have to worry about outside and the sunlight and everything. We could just create our own environment, and it was really nice. My favorite scene, I really like the opening, I would say. Like every time I watch it, I'm always impressed by it. Really.
I always have been saying that my favorite scene has been the fireplace scene because it's so emotional, and everything that happened that night, that was either bad or good, conveyed so much emotion that it really brought something new to the scene that feels different than everything else.
My favorite scene to shoot, at least, was the drag race scene because of the scale of it. Some people might hide because of the problems that can arise from a scene like that, which did arise. But I think when we got there and once we realized that all the cars were there, it was like, wow, what do we have here? In terms of scenes that I watched that I loved, I think it's probably the final scene because that was a last-minute change. And you wouldn't know that, but The very ending was a last-minute change, but that emotion when it goes back to the past with the feet shot, it's so emotional, and I loved watching that.
My favorite scene to film was definitely the ending scene because shots from the last scene were the last day we filmed, and it was really emotional, and it was kind of sad to see this entire thing that we've been working on for like 7 months to just end. But I have more so favorite like shots, like as I was talking about in the Beach Baby dance, kind of just when we're dancing, because that's Dawson and I really just having like a good time. We're kind of just dancing on the top of a dune, and it's really nice. But the beginning scene, there's where it's flipping back between different shots of Julie and Mark. I really love the scene where they're dancing in front of the sunset, and they go about to kiss, but then the tape gets pulled, because that shot just reminds me of Dawson telling me to like go faster because we're going to miss the sunset and we need to get to this one shot, and it just reminds me of the really fun times we had while filming.
I'm gonna kind of follow the same thing Hans was saying. My favorite scene to shoot probably was that Beach Baby dance. I mean, if there's any moment where it actually looks like we're having fun, it's because it is. I mean, we had Beach Baby blasting over a speaker there, and it was pretty much our goal was to just dance and have a good time. And we choreographed a lot of events. We always have a dance that we have memorized now to that song. And it was just a lot of fun. I think you can definitely see it in our faces that we were genuinely having a good time when we were shooting that, even though we were a little bit tired after about 20 times of doing that. And you'll see there's an extended cut. There's like another minute of it you'll get to see, which is cool. But when it comes to my favorite scenes, I'm just gonna have to go with the fire pit scene with Julie sitting over there. The visual imagery conveyed with Julie sitting there and then she's just gone. It's chilling, and I think a lot of people, have moments like that where they remember something, and to be able to convey that through the environment combined with the moments that happened that night, it was unbelievable to capture a moment like that. And it's by far, when I was writing it, I knew I was going to love it, and then when we got there, I knew I was going to love it, and when we were finished, it definitely is my favorite because it conveys so well what Mark was feeling at that moment. So, yeah. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Yeah. This isn't a question, it's just a compliment. I don't know if you remember, Dawson, but there was a lady that came up to you after the premiere, and she said to you, really fall in love with her? And you said, no, but did you believe it?
Yes. Another amazing moment of the premiere night, someone came up to me and asked me, did you really fall in love with Julie? And I looked at her, and I mean, my eyes started to water. I looked at her and I said, no, but I'm really glad you thought so. Because that was the main goal we were trying to go for. And it definitely, I feel like hopefully it worked. And yes, I love that moment.